Well, good morning, guys. How are you doing?
Good.
You enjoying your summers? Nice to not be in school?
Yeah.
Or are you already getting bored and thinking, boy, I can hardly wait for school to start? Any moms and dads getting bored and ready for school to start? Oh my. Well, we have been in these amazing Exodus stories, these stories of God bringing Israel out of Egypt and God calling Moses. And so what we want to do is we want to kind of rush through some things here and see if you guys can kind of get the basic conversation that happens over and over and over again in this part of the story. God calls Moses and tells Moses to go to Pharaoh and to say, let my people... Okay, let's try that together. And to say, let my people go. And Pharaoh says, no. And Pharaoh says, no. And Pharaoh says, no. Very good. Okay, so that's a pretty easy conversation, right? Moses says, come on, say it for me. Moses says, and Pharaoh says, no. So, God does something amazing and powerful. And there's a whole bunch of these things that happen in a row. And then Pharaoh says, oh, please let it stop. And Moses says a prayer. And then Moses says to Pharaoh, because after he says the prayer, everything stops. And Moses says to Pharaoh, let my people go. And guess what? Pharaoh has changed his mind. And Pharaoh says again, no. And so God has to do one thing after another. And every conversation is the same. Pharaoh says, please let it stop. I'll let you go. Moses says a prayer. It stops. And then Moses says, say it with me. And Moses says, let my people go. And Pharaoh says, no. Okay, so here's what happens first. Moses stretches out his rod over the river Nile. And the river turns to blood. Isn't that amazing? Do you think the fish lived through that? No. I don't think so. And all the streams turned to blood. And all the open ponds turned to blood. And the only way they could get fresh water was to dig new wells. And Pharaoh still said, no. And so God told Moses, stretch out your staff over the river and frogs will come up out of the river. Now, how many of you like frogs? Anybody like frogs? Anybody like frog legs? Tastes like chicken? Okay, so, all right, so, but imagine frogs everywhere. In your sock drawer. In your teapot. In your coffee maker. In your silverware drawer. All over the yard. Frogs everywhere. It gets obnoxious. You're getting ready to go to bed and you pull your sheet down. Frogs! Moses said, please make it stop. Sorry, Pharaoh said, please make it stop. Moses said a prayer. And then Moses said, let my people. And Pharaoh said, no. So one thing after another, as I said, the next one, from the dust came out gnats and lice, little biting insects. They were biting everybody. Ew, yeah. And of course Pharaoh wants it to stop. And yeah, you can go. No. When it's all over, he hardens his heart, the story is. And the next one is flies. Swarms of flies everywhere, in your house, on your food, on your lunch, chasing you around the yard, trying to bite you and all kinds of awful stuff. Does this sound bad? This is awful. And Pharaoh says, please let it stop. I'll let you go. And Moses says a prayer. And then he says, let my people go. And Pharaoh says, no. And then God sends a disease to their animals, like the cattle and the goats, the things that they would use for meat and for for skin and fur and for milk, for cheese, and they die. Lots and lots of them. And of course, Pharaoh wants to have it stop. But he eventually says again, no. And so the next one, everybody gets afflicted with boils, which are like sores that erupt in your skin and ooze pus and feel awful and cover your body if you have enough of them. And Moses said, let my people. And Moses said, let my people. And Pharaoh said, no. And then God sends a hailstorm. Big chunks of ice balls landed on everything, and the winter wheat was just about to be harvested, and it was destroyed. All those early crops gone, and people and animals that were outside injured or killed. And lightning that would strike and start fires to boot. And still, we're told Pharaoh's heart was hard. I know. Have you guys ever been stubborn? Have you ever been as stubborn as Pharaoh? Hailstorm, water turned to blood, gnats and lice and flies biting you, all your animals dying. That's pretty stubborn. He hardens his heart. And so again, Moses holds out his staff, and God blows in a wind from the east and brings swarms of locusts. Do you know what locusts are? Well, they could be like our cicadas or like big grasshoppers. And there were so many of them, it says they covered the surface of the ground and they filled their houses. Imagine that. Now, I'm told that locust can be good to eat if you dip them in honey, but I've honestly never eaten a bug that I intended to eat. Only accidental bugs. But that many locusts and the new crops that were coming up were destroyed. And Pharaoh still hardened his heart. And so one more time, a ninth time, God sends a calamity on Egypt. And the ninth time is darkness. Now, have you ever been in the dark? And it's so dark and you can't see anything. There's no light at all. No moon, no sun, no stars, no light bulb, no flashlight, no cell phone screen. It's just totally dark, and you're starting to get a little scared, and it starts to feel like it's almost like you can feel the darkness around you. Have you ever experienced that? I know I have. God sends a darkness that can be felt on the land for 3 days. 3 days, no light. Except for the Hebrews, God's people. There was light there, but not for the Egyptians. Total darkness. And still Pharaoh hardened his heart. Yes, sir.
But what about like the people that were like, the people that are not like part of that are in where Pharaoh lives? What about the other people that just collect stuff? Do they have the problems?
Everybody who was part of Egypt had the problems. Not just the Pharaoh. So you can imagine they were all saying, Pharaoh, please let them go. And Pharaoh kept saying, no, no, no. His heart was hard. Well, I know I can be stubborn sometimes. I hope I'm not going to be that stubborn. And I'm glad that when God decides he's going to set the slaves free, God does something pretty amazing to do it, even if Pharaoh keeps saying no. Will you guys say a prayer with me? Okay. Dear God, thank you for your power. Thank you for setting slaves free. Amen. Amen. Now we have worksheets for you. I'm going to ask you to